What up, my homies? We're in the captain's seat right now, and one of the biggest things that I get comments on YouTube and my buddies when they get in the boat kind of mention, it's like, hey, your graphs are really clear. What's your settings? And then the second one is what did you do to your map? And there's a little tweak that you can make, and it lets you kind of basically be a lot more efficient. Note the fish part of that. So you can really cancel out water when you're looking for some of these offshore fish, which can be a blast, right? It's so much fun to find a group of fish, catch them for like an hour, catch them for 2 hours, sometimes catch them all day long, dude. So I'm gonna show you some tweaks as well as the settings that I make on my graphs to just make that process easier. And especially if you're just setting up and getting a new graph this year to put on your boat, this will help you. So hit that like and subscribe button. Let's dive into it. So I gotta send a shout out to my buddy Rich at Hydrilla Gear for this. He's like OCD with rigging boats. He's a good friend and he's helped me rig up Spaceballs and now Fireballs. And he recommended this setup. So I have a double precision sonar graph mount right here, and they kind of angle in a little, almost like the video game mounts where you got multiple monitors. So it kind of surrounds you. But this unit is 100% dedicated to mapping, whereas this unit is 100% dedicated to like sonar. Now they're networked and they're integrated, so you can do either on both, but having the one specifically for mapping does some cool little tricks, and that's exactly what I'm about to show you. So what I set up right here is a split screen of two different maps. So this is Navionics. This is CMAP, specifically for the Southeast. Now you're gonna notice differences right away, right? There's a bunch of colors on this one. This one's got kind of a red shade. So I do two different things. Number one, with the Navionics, I actually do what's called a photo transparency. I've downloaded it's basically like shading. It's like relief shading. And what you do is you go to chart options and you set it up with full once you've downloaded it to your card. And then you can basically play around with the transparency so that you see less of the photo, or less of the depressions or more of the depressions. So they actually show up as shaded like relief on the mapping. I try to do a balance because the only thing that ends up happening that's a little frustrating, you can see there's a road bed right there. Sometimes if you go super dark, you actually stop seeing the road beds, and that's one of the important factors with the Navionics. So you kind of want a little balance where you get some of that shading. The other thing that I do is I set a safety depth of around 20 foot, and that usually puts a nice break for some of the ledge fishing when you have that photo thing kind of, there you go, like highlighted. See how it's breaking that 20-foot line? On most lakes, that's what's going to kind of be your break line for the grass lines, or kind of that depth when you start looking for some of those offshore fish cut off. Now it varies, so you can do it basically wherever you want to, but I leave that photo transparency a little bit up so I get some of those shading markers, and you can see where there's like a ridge or something along those lines. Now on this guy, so this is the CMAP, and with the CMAP, one of the awesomest features is shading. So it makes your life so much easier when you're looking for stuff. You can see the points, you can see how the depth contours kind of like shape, you can see where it's shallow, and it's a very simple setup. It makes it a lot easier to run the boat around. It makes it a lot easier to figure out where you want to fish. All you need to do is you could save two different basically custom shades. So you go to chart options, you go down to the bottom and it says shading. So I have my depth 1 set up, but basically you hit custom and you can select and set up any kind of color shading that you want with this thing. So I set up like yellow and it's at 6 foot. I set up green and it's at, what is it, 10 foot, and you can do that up to, I think there's like 7 or 8 slots or 9 slots that you can do. But what it does is it allows you to get this great look on the map where your contours are extremely highlighted and extremely contrasted. So I know that point has a nice little like flat tip to it, right? So that's where you're gonna look for fish, especially in summer, as it breaks down to the creek channel. Now the shortcomings with CMAP is it does not show the creek beds, kind of like this does. So this has shaded creek beds when the transparency, let me turn it down just a little bit to give you a better idea here. Where's my photo transparency? So the creek beds on here show up either as chattery lines, or there's situations where they show up in shaded relief, just like that. This is actually Smith Lake right here. And the other thing is you do not get the road beds and things along those lines. But what I have found that is really interesting is there is stuff that shows up on CMAP when it comes to just standard like contours, like points and things like that, that are not on Navionics. And there's a little bit of vice versa, but I think the majority of people are running Navionics and not running CMAP. So if you can find like a subtle point that maybe like sticks out a little bit more, kind of like something like that, where it's a super, oh, that's a good one right there. See how there's like a super subtle secondary point right there? If you can find stuff like that, that's actually going to be stuff that the guys aren't seeing on that Navionics, and you might actually have it yourself. I actually had a situation 2 years ago where I found this point on this lake that, dude, no one knew about because it was not on Navionics and it was on here. And I smashed them, dude, for 2 days straight. We caught fish for like 2 hours a piece, dude. Had like 18, 19 pounds and just caught 100 fish and nobody knew it was there. So let's move over to our sonar screen, and I'll show you some B-roll shots of what it actually looks like, but obviously out of the water, the transducer is not gonna work. So on the 2D, it's really simple. Settings are, I always leave this to auto because I don't really care. I run it at 200 kilohertz. Auto sensitivity, the color line is the big thing because that's where you get kind of like the chatter in that. I do it to a manual 76%. On these guys, these are both down scan. I use two different down scans because in my personal opinion, they show you different stuff. So this one is kind of like my blue. This is the one I trust the most. It's palette number 11. You need to use different contrast settings on these guys depending on the color. I once again leave it to auto. I have it at 700K chirp because I have that crazy, what is it, the crazy like see-through transducer from Lowrance, the really good one that comes with the Pro units now. And then the other thing is, under the advanced, we put surface clarity at medium. Basically, it just clears up some of the chatter on the top, especially with like prop wash and things along those lines. I do have all this stuff mounted. I also have a precision sonar. It's a jack plate mount for my transducer, so it keeps that transducer very like still and even, because sometimes chatter in that can affect, like motor chatter and things like that can affect the return that you're getting. The other thing with all this sonar is, and it is a player in how clear my stuff is, I have a C-Clear harness, super wide gauge wire, little interference, direct power, and that does help 100%. If you're super into this offshore stuff, it makes a big difference. So this is a secondary downscan screen. I have this guy in a red palette, so this is number 8. So the biggest trick with this palette is it shows you a lot of bait. It's not always trustworthy with fish, but it's a super high contrast palette. I have it set for contrast A+2, once again on the 700K chirp. The trick with this one is it's especially good in fall and winter when you're looking for very small shad and very small minnows. It shows a lot more than the blue palette. I don't know why that is, but it literally shows different stuff. So on my side scan, and this is a question I get a lot, I run with this new transducer 120 feet out. That seems like a lot, but as long as you're on a semi-flat lake, like doesn't have like crazy ridges, like a highland impoundment like Smith Lake or like some of those big mountain impoundments, you can't pull this off. On lakes that are a little bit flatter, like the ones we fish in Florida, Lanier, Gunnersville, for the most part, you can run 120 foot out and get decent signal. If not, just go down to 100 foot. I won't go down to anything less than 80, otherwise you're losing the functionality of being able to see out to the side. So setting wise on that, I still run that at 455 chirp. I found if you put it at the new 1075K chirp, you don't see much. It's actually too powerful for the shallow water stuff that we're doing. The other thing is I run a contrast at 75%. That gives me enough to identify if the bottom is hard because it gives a brighter return, but still see shadows and see fish on that. Sometimes you can have the contrast too high, and it actually, it camouflages the fish in the brightness of the bottom. However, that is a difference with these guys. With your down scans, I actually crank the contrast up because if there's a dot, I just want to see the dot, you know, I want to see the blip. The other thing with the side scan is I run it at palette 11. Now this is a big note, guys. This is an amber colored palette. I switch between 10 and 11. 11 is a very bluish palette. It's kind of like the old school blue on some of the original side scans. The reason I would run at 11 is if I don't have grass. It seems like this amber color is good with hard bottom, as well as grass lines and things along those lines. When I go to 11, the grass gets a little bit tougher to just see through and get clarity on. So 11 is really good for open water. If you got broad flats of sand, of rock, of things along those lines, 11 is a great one. However, if I'm fishing Guntersville, or if I'm fishing a lake that has some grass, 10 is my go-to. Last tip I'll give you, and then we're gonna wrap up. And if you guys got anything to add, I'm always open to suggestions, because really this offshore game, it's 100% about efficiency, about being fluid, about being quick, and about finding water, Xing out water, and identifying like where they should be, and then being able to cover that water, scan it, and look for those fish in an efficient, quick manner, and really trust the return that you're getting on from your Lowrance. So one of the last things that I do is I hate taking notes, right? One of the original reasons I started doing the videos was to actually have a real fishing log, dude, to actually see what happened, see it in real time, as well as kind of keep the memory and share the memory with you guys, because it's fun seeing like how you catch fish, but you also like learn stuff about how you caught them that you don't always remember in the heat of the moment. And that's one way that I use these units. So I use my mapping side as kind of a fishing log. I have like 7,000 waypoints, and that doesn't mean I know where there's tons of fish everywhere. But what I try to do is I try to keep details of either ways that I've caught fish, times that I've caught fish, or structure that might be functional for like down the line. And a great example of that is like 2 weeks ago, me and Swimsuit Girl went out, dude. I caught a 6 and change, a 5 and change, a 4 and change, and a 3. Caught like big ones. And it was literally off a spot that I found 2 months ago when we were still like before spring, and I happened to be idling around and I found this shell bar, dude, in like 10 foot of water. And I'm like, bro, that's gonna be really good in like June, July, August, like sometime in that range. I need to save this. So I dropped a rock symbol and I dropped a date. 725, 625. So I try to use the symbols on my Lowrance as well as dating, like just using simple month and year to sort of keep track of where I'm catching fish, where I'm finding structure, where the grass is growing. That's a great thing for Florida. You're not always fishing a spot in Florida, but you want to know, hey, where was the grass? Like, where was the grass line last year, 2 years ago? Things along those lines. So I use it to kind of keep a fishing log without having to write the stuff down. And the fact is, it's right here, right? I boot up my Lowrance, I have the mapping right there. I see a waypoint, it has a date on it, it's a grass symbol, it's a fish symbol, it's a tree symbol. I know exactly what happened, So it's very easy for me to access and use that information, especially if I'm in the same area that I was in 1, 2, 3 years ago. I'll be like, man, I remember that. I freaking smoked them right there. So it's a real easy, efficient way to kind of keep track of what you're doing, remind you of some things that were good, and maybe you need to recheck in that situation. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. Like I said, if you guys got any ways that you tweak your sonar, tweak your electronics to be more efficient during the summer, let me know, because I'm always open to stuff. But I really think if you implement some of the shading stuff, as well as some of the settings on this down scan and side scan that I'm using, you're going to be more successful and more efficient offshore. Hope you guys enjoyed this. We'll see you back out on the water, hopefully, because I don't like sitting in the carport. I want to go fishing, talking fishing, and hanging out. Later, my homies.